Hey everyone, Matthias here. Last weekend was our second little backyard adventure race, and man, what an incredible day it was. I loved it. Thank you all for coming out and supporting this little adventure we have at LBA Park in Olympia. You put on a bib for the first time in a very long time and raced with others and enjoyed the community we as trail runners have. It was so great to see all your exhausted and smiling faces as you crossed the finish line. I loved hosting the trail running community once again at LBA Park, and I can't wait to do it again next year. But enough about LBA. Let's talk about this week's show. And oh boy, do I have a show for you. Can you tell I'm stoked? Good friend of the show, Tabatha Collins, is back, and she brought her trail running partner and fellow mountain slayer, Mary Flinders, with her. They were the first folks who attempted my epic Cushman Six route in the Staircase region of Olympic National Park. The first people. How exciting is that? But yes, I said attempted. When Tabatha contacted me a few days prior, I felt comfortable sending them out into these mountains. These ladies are strong, experienced, and they know what they're doing. But these mountains aren't easy, and there's a lot of backcountry off-trail travel. So without wanting to give it all away, here is their story. Tabatha Collins is back on, and technically we should only be talking about Lumberjack and the amazing job she did pacing me on the last loop into the deep night when the rain started pouring. But we have another guest with us, and I let Tabatha introduce her. And, you know, Lumberjack's already a few weeks behind us. We don't need to talk about that because we have something way more exciting to talk about. So, Tabatha, Mary, welcome to the show. Tabatha, give us a quick intro who Mary is.
Mary is my good friend, Mary Flinders, who I met when I was living overseas in Okinawa, and we've gone on a lot of pretty crazy ultra adventures together. She's extremely strong runner. She would be my number one choice pretty much if I was in any kind of situation where it's challenging of the person I would want to be with me. She's had a really good year. She placed in her age group at Zion 100K, and she just did back-to-back 50Ks, Needles 50K, and the one she did before that was the one at Mount St. Helens. What's that one called, Mary?
The Backcountry Rise.
Yeah, Backcountry Rise. She did really well there as well, and she's getting ready to do a Cascade Crest 100 for the first time this year.
Fantastic resume. Thanks for the introduction. So number one, so you were very much smarter than me because you did the Zion 100K. I tried to do the 100 miler and DNF'd at mile 70. Just because the heat was so brutal and just did me in up. Tried to climbing up those mesas at like 3 p.m. If I would have been smarter, I would have done the 100K and would have been successful. So congratulations.
Well, this year was pretty brutal as far as the heat goes.
So you guys, you ladies, have a long time climbing running partnership. I am gathering.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. So is your main playground here the Pacific Northwest?
Well, currently, yeah. we've done some traveling a little bit more recently. Certainly, just stayed a little closer to home.
Cool. Super cool. So now you find yourself, Tabatha texts me a couple weeks ago and says, okay, I think I'm ready to do and the Cushman Six route, which we've talked about on the show many times before. You would have heard, there were several people that have shown interest in trying to repeating it, and there were several people who've shown interest in repeating portions of it, but you're the first who attempted the whole thing. So number one, before we get into the details of all of this, a huge congratulations for even considering attempting it, because it is a beast of a route. And what makes it a beast is that it is seemingly accessible. So to start off, what made you want to do?
I kind of wanted to look at something here on the peninsula, and there's only so many options. And I just love Mount Rose and Mount Eleanor. I'd never done Washington. I like that whole area, so it was just really intriguing. And I've never done anything like that where it hooks, it links all the mountains together. And Mary and I Chuck and I came up with another route kind of in the same area. And so Mary and I had done that together. The staircase, I think it's like the staircase lollipop. So we've done that in that area. And I know Mary, we've done some other runs in that area. And so I just thought it would be kind of exciting to try. I don't think we were quite prepared for every part of it.
Yeah.
But she had just done Needles 50K also that Saturday.
Oh.
And we started this run 2 days later. So
you're coming off of, all right, this is going to be a nice recovery run. And Tabatha goes like, no, we're going to be tagging 6 peaks, and 2/3 of the route is going to be bushwhacking through the backcountry. Are you ready for this?
Well, you told me about the bushwhacking part. I knew about the elevation part, and I figured it would be kind of a long, slow adventure, but these peaks. But yeah, a little more than I anticipated as far as bushwhacking and the lack of obvious trail in a lot of places.
Yeah, that just slows you down, right? I mean, that's one of the big challenges. Mary, how many of these peaks have you done individually?
That's a good question. Several, I want to say. Of those 6, just Rose and Eleanor.
Okay. And
I didn't.
Go ahead, sorry.
Well, just coming down the wagon wheel, I hadn't done that yet, but I'd done runs in that area, like the staircase lollipop loop.
So, quickly talk about the staircase lollipop. I'm not quite familiar with it. I know that Chuck has been working on something out there, but give us a quick rundown. What's the staircase lollipop?
Well, so that one, you go up from the campground ranger station, and all the way up to the first divide, I believe. Mm-hmm. From there, it's 30 miles, and I don't know the route. It's a loop, going through campgrounds and
cool.
And looping back up. We went when it was icy, and so that made going up and going down slow. But it was beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, very cool. So, so that goes up first, right? Well, super. Tabatha, so
you hit several passes, like O'Neill Pass, Anderson Pass, and I think it ends up, it's over 50 miles. It's like 55 miles total.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But at
least about the same amount of elevation gain as your route.
but at least most of it is on trails.
I think they were all.
I think all of it.
We lost in the campgrounds where they have several little offshoots, and it's just a little bit confusing at those points. But otherwise, all trail.
Cool. And Tabatha, how many of the peaks of Cushman Six have you done before?
I also had only done 2.
Oh, you also okay? Yeah,
I had not done Washington yet. So
yeah, okay. So you picked this project, which I'm very honored that somebody would consider picking it, because I've been looking at this ridgeline and these various peaks for many years, and I've been trying to figure out how to link them together, and I've been trying to before I found the Eleanor Rose Connector Trail, I've always sort of assumed you more or less have to drop all the way down to the road. And so for the longest time, I've been trying to figure out a sort of a combo mountain running and then biking in between the trailheads. But if you would do it that way, number one, it would make it logistically quite difficult. And number two, you are adding so much more vert because you always have to come all the way down, right? I mean, in a sense, these backcountry trails, they save you a ton of vert, which makes it actually sort of possible to go all the way across, because I think I mapped it once out. if you would try to take all these peaks, then you are definitely in the ultra or distance, perhaps even over 50 miles or so by the time you like go back and forth, right? So, okay.
So that,
yes.
I'm curious with the history. Do you know anything of the history of that trail, that connector trail? Because we thought it was really interesting. It looked like someone or several people put in a lot of work.
You know,
a long time ago. That was interesting.
Yeah, you know, I really don't. I mean, because of the way Bear Camp is situated and sort of a camp, I'd almost wonder if it's a hunting thing. But I didn't really know that there was active hunting in that area. So I don't know. I really don't. I totally stumbled upon it by accident. I don't know. I searched for something. I mean, I probably searched for more information on the Washington-Eleanor Traverse. Just because it feels like such an obvious traverse, and there are several routes, and none of them are really easy, and certainly none of them are obvious, right? And so there's no clear defined traverse out, and so as I was doing research on that, I stumbled upon that connector trail, and when I found it, I mean, my eyes like popped out. I was like, this is absolutely amazing, right? I mean, just the connector from Washington to Eleanor, you know, once you head over to Copper, it gets a little trickier, but overall the trail exists and is maintained, and ropes are there, and you can trust the ropes, right? But getting ahead of ourselves, let's take it sort of section by section. You start at Big Creek. What time in the mornings did you guys start?
It's about 6:30, I believe, when we started.
Okay. So when you started at 6:30, did you think that you would head into the night? Because that's fairly late start, right?
You know, we figured we would end in the evening. At least that was my assumption. I didn't realize we'd end as late as we did, or as late.
Well, we actually ended in the day.
Yeah.
Sure.
Had some kinks we had to work out up on Copper, but that's also getting ahead of ourselves.
Right. Okay, so you start 6:30. Neither of you.
I think part of it too was she had just done that other race, and I didn't want to, you know, I wanted her to make sure she had ample rest as well. So
sure,
that was a big kind of a part of it for me. Why I didn't want to push like super, super early.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Perfect. Okay, so you get sort of a fairly easy run up to the trailhead of Washington. And since you've both never done Washington before, what is your thought when you hit the Washington trailhead and then the route after?
I love that kind of trail. It just is rugged and almost straight up, but not quite. But it's still an obvious, doable trail. I thought it was a blast. I loved climbing up that, and then getting to the top was just glorious. So that part was great. We were having a blast at that point, I think.
Super.
At least
Yeah. It is really fun, but you can clearly tell a difference, you know, with Eleanor being so popular and Rose being so runnable. Right? Washington sits right next to it, and you clearly can tell that this is a different beast, right? I
think that Tabatha had warned me that this one is considered more challenging, so I was kind of expecting that. So that wasn't
good,
like a big surprise, I wasn't too worried about that.
And route finding up the main face was all no problem and stuff like that.
Yeah, all the way up. That was not hard.
It's great.
As far as navigating goes.
That's great. So you make it up Washington, and yes, the views are absolutely phenomenal. And then you look kind of over to Eleanor, and you realize, I mean, there's such an obvious. And no, there's no obvious traverse, but it beckons to kind of be sort of connected, right?
It does. It's right there.
I know.
So close.
I know, right? No, it absolutely does. So the big challenge was, if you followed my GPS, is that the GPS is just messed up in many places, right? It can't really track, and there are lots of
yeah, in the rock field, that's where the big glitch was.
You're like, wait a second.
Well, and there was definitely a little bit of, do we go up this side of the cliff, or do we go up the other side of the cliff? I'm not really sure. We're going to just poke around and see what we can figure out.
And Mary had the route. So Mary had the route on her watch, and I had the route on my phone, so I could see like the whole picture. And then she was kind of getting, just like I don't know, what was it, Mary? Like maybe 200 feet or
segment of it, and then the arrow just was so big in comparison to the map on my watch that it could be 20 feet off. So it's a little hard navigating that.
Yeah, it's super hard navigating. I think what made it possible for me, and I've said it before, that we had, I had conceptualized the route, but we had Chris Stroder with us, and he is so incredibly strong navigating in that kind of terrain, and almost the entire way through the traverse, but then definitely toward up to Copper. He was essentially 50 to 100 feet ahead of us, right? And so he sort of scouted, and by the time he kind of decided where we needed to go, we had caught up with him, right? So we never had this problem where we had to really slow down. It was like, where should we go? Should we go this way? Oh, that's the wrong way. Let's backtrack, right? We had to do very little backtracking, which really helped us from a timing point of view.
I can see how that would be a huge advantage.
Yeah, no, absolutely, right? And I mean, he'd done the traverse before, but he wanted to take us higher up over the ridgeline, and I wasn't comfortable with that level of exposure, and so I opted to go lower. But then you have all that loose scree that you have to navigate, which in some places doesn't feel any safer, right?
Right. When this whole side of the mountain is kind of, all the rocks and screes crumbling down around you.
Yeah, no, exactly, right? And especially if you're
not particularly comforting.
And then if you have two people, right? Because someone has to go ahead down a gully, and then you feel like every move you make sends little pebbles and rocks down that gully.
There were some areas where I just had to wait, for Tabatha to get all the way down and out of the way before I felt comfortable going, because we were kicking down rocks on each other.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's definitely something you have to do in certain places. So I hope if I explain this to you, that there's one place in the on the traverse towards the end, just before you sort of pop out and you sort of connect to the winter route, but you're in this like mountain, this rock cirque where you're surrounded by these giant boulders, and this rock face is just all around you. I thought that was one of the most incredible places. Can you recall that place? Did you navigate through that? I found it absolutely stunning.
Yeah. Well, I listened to your podcast on the drive out there, which probably would have been better to listen to that a little sooner. And I remember when you were talking about that part, so I had told Mary about that. And yeah, I think that's where we had the big glitch in the GPS, where it was just like this straight line. Mm-hmm. So we kind of had to just guess. And I think that took us a little time, right, Mary? And that probably the most time in the traverse from Washington to Eleanor was in that section.
Well, I feel like there were a few sections where we were kind of going back and forth. Is this it? This might be it. I think this is it. So I can't honestly say I'm exactly clear which portion exactly. Mm-hmm. That was it.
Yeah,
but then we saw people. We saw people going up the trail.
Oh, yes, on not we were trying to get. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh yeah, cool. Yeah, exactly. I think once you pop out from the top, you can kind of see over to Eleanor, and you sort of see that kind of that plateau just before the Eleanor summit, and then okay, you've made it through. So you make it over to Eleanor. Did that feel like a relief because the traverse was quite challenging? Did you feel like, okay, this seems like a big, difficult section completed, now we are sort of on trail again?
That definitely felt good. I do appreciate having an actual trail under my feet. And again, gorgeous views and the people.
Yeah.
But it definitely made me appreciate that this was going to be more of a challenge than I realized. And we'd only gotten to the second peak, so.
Did you at any point consider cutting it short?
Well, we'll save that for later on.
Okay, sounds good. So you're heading down Eleanor. I mean, I remember this amazing feeling because I had wanted to do the traverse for a really long time. We had done it. We done it in a reasonable good time. You make it up to Eleanor and you go down Eleanor, and so you know that you have quite a bit of good trail ahead of you. And I also had done the connector, so I knew what to expect there too. We had stashed some water right after a couple hundred feet into the connector trail. That we felt like that was a good. It wasn't quite a halfway point, but it felt like a good point, a good accessible point to stash some water. So we did a refuel break there, and then we had that connector. So how was it easy for you to find that connector trail? Did that GPS work for you from on that point?
Yeah. I think we went just slightly past it. I mean, maybe 100 feet or so, and then we turned around, but it was working pretty well by then. And the GPS, our GPS to this point had been working. It was just the glitches.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the glitches that you were following from the route, right?
That made it difficult because then we, especially like I said, when we're in that rock section and there's this just straight line. So trying to figure out, because if you know how it is, like you can go up one section and put in a whole bunch of effort, and then you're completely in the wrong place. Then you have to descend again, and doing that so many times, it's just, it kind of, wears you out.
Oh no,
absolutely. And then you don't get anywhere. So
yeah, absolutely. And there are some sections where you're like, okay, I can easily go up this, but I don't know if I want to go down this again or something, right?
Yeah.
And so that level of commitment is really challenging, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think part of my frustration. So if I know what I'm aiming for, that's something I don't have on my watch necessarily. It gives me a general direction, but if I know exactly where I'm supposed to be, that made it a little bit difficult.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think that the traverse is difficult because it's too long off trail to give you any kind of good route markers. And I think the climbers like to go all the way over the ridgeline. In the winter, I hear that there is a fairly reasonably easy traverse if you have crampons and an ice axe on the northern side of the ridge, where you essentially can just, from that saddle just below the summit of Mount Washington, you can sort of drop down and you can just walk over a snowfield all the way pretty much across to just below the summit of Eleanor. So I think that's what adds to the challenge, that there are no cairns or anything, right? Because they're too many people choose their own route over there.
Yeah, I can see how that would be easier in the snow if everything's just kind of solid and you have the right gear.
Yeah. Well, okay, so you make it to the connector trail. Now, Tabatha obviously had heard me talk about this connector trail. As you're going on this trail, explain to me what your feeling is, because it's a trail, but it's so much narrower, and then it gets exposed in sections. So what did you think? How did you experience that?
I thought it was a really neat section of that route. It looked like older trail, that it had been maintained, but not for a while, and maybe by locals. I don't know what the history of it is. It would be interesting to learn, but it's obviously a trail. Mm-hmm. Obviously work has been done on it, but things like log bridges with ropes holding it up, and missing bridges with just ropes leading you down into the
underbrush.
Down and back again.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a different kind of forest from what I was used to over there. I thought it was really fascinating and beautiful, and just a fun section.
Yeah, I love this section so much. And yeah, it's interesting, just as you're describing, right? Because the trail is clearly, somebody built that trail at some point, but somehow nobody wants to have it on a map, so it doesn't show up on any map. And
I'm curious, how did you find that? It's so random.
Yeah, so as I said, I mean, I was essentially searching online. I don't even know what search term, but I ended up on an article on the Washington Trails Association website where somebody had done that route. And I don't know, did the person link to their GPS or some GPX file or something like that? But I sort of sleuthed and found out that they had posted on Gaia all trails or so. They had posted a GPX, and they had a pretty good explanation when you start off on Washington and you just on Eleanor on the upper trailhead, and sort of explained how you connect to it.
Okay.
And so I was like, well, and it's a lot easier to find from Eleanor than it is from Rose. I've been a couple times now running by trying to figure out where the connection point is from Rose, but there's a big tree that had fallen sort of over that trail just beyond that turnoff, and so you don't see any trail from the Rose trail if you try to find it this way.
And we absolutely studied the tree on the Rose Trail.
Because you had to go back there.
A couple of screws in it, yeah. Because we do that loop, and I would imagine we'll get to that, but yeah, it is not obvious at all.
Mm-hmm. No, I know.
I would never trail there without knowing that there was.
But when we came back, we noticed we hadn't really noticed them on the way to Rose, but coming back off of Rose, they had put like the the markings they have on the tree that are normally a diamond. Someone used like lids from an olive jar or something, and they just had those screwed on the trees to mark the tree. So it was really well marked in that way. It's
funny, right? Because exactly right. Like from Bear Camp down to Rose, you know exactly where to go if you find these yellow discs on the tree. Yeah,
it's a matter of what you're looking for.
Yeah, exactly. Once you know what you're looking for. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So yeah, but it's interesting, I had just done that connector last week or something, and I was curious what if there were any trees down from the winter, but because that would be sort of an interesting indicator how active that trail is maintained. Because as you say, there are some sections where they've clearly put some rocks and build a trail at some point and build these bridges, but you don't really know how actively maintained it is. And then you look at the ropes that are put up, and the ropes are clearly newer, right? There are some old pieces of rope, but there are also some fairly newer pieces of rope that you can really trust. So someone cares about that trail.
That was the impression. So I am curious who that might be.
I do need to. I really hope that at some point I'm lucky, and I'm gonna run into some people who are working for the Mount Rose Trail crew, because they are sort of an elusive trail angels who've been maintaining the Rose Trail for years, and they've now put a ton of effort into cleaning up and really making the Eleanor Trail a lot nicer on the upper sections, with putting some steps in and building a more safe route. Yeah. But every time when I'm trying to do research and trying to figure out who the Mount Rose Trail Crew is, the only thing that I can find is that they are listed on the National Forest website as a group that maintains our trails, and that's all there is to it. And so, there's no Facebook page, there's no website, there's no contact information, and I'm like, I want to thank them, but I hope that I run into them at some point working, because I think that there's some locals who really care about these trails, and I bet you they know about that trail, and perhaps even they're the ones maintaining it.
That could be.
So, all right. So you come to the rope sections. I mean, those were exhilarating, right?
They were neat. There was a little bit of backtracking because you go across and then there's no bridge at all. But yeah, we got some fun video and photographs.
Super. Yeah, I loved all your photos. I think it's super cool. That section. So then you come to Bear Camp, which is in the middle of nowhere, and so random. And there's some trash where people clearly have been camping. I don't know what they were doing there. Most of the time there are lots of bugs there, so you don't really want to linger.
It reminds me of that Tarzan scene in the cartoon when they're playing that song, on all the pots and pans. That's kind of what that whole camp reminded me.
But I think the favorite part was the random wheelbarrow just out there in the forest.
Yeah, exactly, right? I mean, somehow is a structure there, and then there is some bare wire and stuff, so it feels a little bit like a campsite, but then there are these giant boulders, and it looks like people have been staying under these boulders, so it's weird. It's too far out.
Utensils and chairs.
Yeah. No.
Firewood already cut up. It was pretty crazy.
Yeah, it was interesting.
So super. So then you drop down to Rose, and I mean I cried there a little bit because I feel like you losing so much vertical on that stretch down. You're losing 500 feet or so. And then you connect to Rose, and then you're on familiar terrain, make your way up. I think you did the loop clockwise, right? You kept dropping and then and climbed up Rose that way. And then you head the ridge back to the trail. So you're up at Rose. You assess your situation. You're at peak 3. Tell me a little bit where you at, headspace-wise, energy-wise, food, water. How are you feeling at that point?
Well, I feel like as far as energy, getting a little tired. The food and water, we were good. There was snow. We had food. I think my concern was with the time a little bit. It was getting a little bit later, and we had to climb up a couple more peaks. But at least it was familiar trail, so there was that, and it was actual trail at that point. So feeling good about that.
Yeah. Do you remember what time you hit Rose?
I wrote it down and then I deleted it. It was
late afternoon.
Yeah, it was getting.
Did you? If you hit it late afternoon, were you? I mean, at that point, you're going to hit headlamp time, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So you were prepared for that, and you were like, "Okay, we're just going to motor on." Good. You know, when Tabatha first uploaded her Strava, and I realized that you spent the night, I felt really bad. I was like, oh my gosh, did I somehow? I know that you are strong. I mean, Mary, I haven't met you before, but I know that you guys are super strong. And so I trust you in making decisions, but I was sort of worried that because I had written that website and the way I'm talking about it, and I've had this experience before by talking about a race in very glowing reviews, and people sign up for the race, and then they suffer through it because I somehow made it sound too easy. So that morning when you or the day after you uploaded, I went back to my website and reread some of the section. I was like, how did I write about this section? Did I explain this well? And like, I think I did a pretty good job. I think I made it pretty clear.
Yeah, I really should go and look at it. I haven't actually seen it. And I think the biggest problem was just timing.
Yeah.
I think that if we hadn't hit it, we hit Copper Mountain just as it was getting dark.
Mm-hmm.
And we went up a peak that we shouldn't have. So there was our first problem. We were climbing around on a peak that we didn't need to be on at all.
Yeah.
And then we hit the actual peak as it was getting dark, and we just... With your headlight, you have limited vision.
Yeah.
And it was very steep. And it was really hard to see beyond just that light, how steep, how long the drop is,
Mm-hmm.
What risks do we want to take?
But this is when our GPSs stopped working.
Yeah, well, and part of it, we were moving so slowly.
I have no idea what they were doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, GPS was jumping around because we weren't moving that quickly. We were climbing and descending and trying to find where we were supposed to head off of Copper Mountain. And I think because we weren't moving quickly, the GPS was just all over the place.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It has a hard time figuring out, are you on this side of the ridge? Are you on that side of the ridge, right? And then trying to figure out the right place. So
and I'm certain if we had hit it in the daylight, we would have been just fine. Mm-hmm. But the dark was our enemy, I think.
Yeah.
If we just needed to get there an hour earlier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, then...
It's pretty much what it comes.
Yeah, and I only read really the FKT site. I didn't go to the other. I just read the description on the FKT site.
Okay.
So,
yeah, I put all this work into building this beautiful website with all this description, and then you're not even reading it. Oh, I'm so disappointed.
Sorry.
No.
I just went by the FKT site, and it was so simple, like the way you wrote it out on there.
I need to go back to the FKT site, and I know that I sort of like simplified it over there, but yeah, I gotta reread that and see if I need to change anything. Yeah.
Well, it tried to be required reading before actually hitting the ground in the first place, which I failed to do. So that bad on my part.
A thing that I wrote on the website, and for listeners and for you, it's mountelenor.com. That's a domain I've owned for years, and for that particular run, I just decided to use it for that. Even though it obviously goes beyond what you do in Mount Eleanor. But one thing that I said on there is that, once you head back from Rose up through Bear Camp, that's when you're sort of committing to having to go all the way through to Copper and then beyond down to Wagon Wheel, because you're essentially then in this valley on the north side of these peaks, and you've got about a mile of sort of bushwhacky trail from past Bear Camp, and then that the trail just sort of disappears in the woods, right? And you gotta sort of just bushwhack yourself through the woods up a hillside, which isn't too long and too bad, but you essentially come then out above the trees, and then you come in this meadow, which is actually quite inviting and nice, but it is just below where it gets steep up to Copper, right?
Mm-hmm. I don't know if we came in that way or not.
Okay.
I think we might have come in a little bit of a different way, huh? Don't you think, Mary? Because we did that extra climb.
I'm not sure about that extra climb, how that actually happened in the first place. We spent so much time on Copper Mountain that it kind of gets a little bit foggy.
Yeah.
I tell you, we spent so much time after dark going up and going down that peak that by the time we finally stopped, I was exhausted. My legs were shaking, and we had both slipped and caught ourselves, and it kind of got a little bit scary at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And so a little bit of what happened in between Mount Rose and Copper Mountain, when climbing around on that False Peak, that was frustrating.
Yeah.
Because we didn't need to be there at all. And then just that we couldn't find it. It's not that big of a peak. There's not that many places you can go.
Mm-hmm.
And you get to Copper Mountain, so it just it just kind of boggled my mind that we couldn't just find the route out of there.
Yeah.
When we had the daylight, I mean, we got out pretty quick.
Well, first try up there.
Yeah,
So.
I'm looking at your GPS right now, Tabatha, and you have like a really, and again, right? I mean, as you're describing, right, the GPS got pretty haywire there, but you have a pretty big loop that takes you sort of around, and perhaps that's that peak that you're describing, but you're going somewhere completely different. Way to sort of taking a left turn. So, sorry.
Well, and I wonder if that was just the next morning when we were just like, we just need to go down. We just need to get off.
Oh, yeah, that could be.
And we went down into this little, it was not really a valley, but that's the best way I can explain it. And it was pretty much surrounded by higher mountains and peaks.
Mm-hmm.
But then this valley just kind of dropped off. So it was almost like a valley above more cliffs. There just didn't seem to be anywhere to go. And that was, I think our mentality the next morning was just, we just need to get off this mountain. And so we kind of went down and just poked around to see if we could find any place that made sense to go down. And really nothing did. And so that's when we went back up and were able to find the trail beyond that. But I would be willing to bet that circle is where we were poking around the next morning.
Oh yeah. Where you're like, okay, how can we get down the fastest way? And
really, it was this: we just need to go back up and find the trail. It doesn't matter if we go backward or forward. We just need to go back up and touch again.
And I did not want to go back up that mountain again.
Oh man.
I think we went up and down like what? I mean, in the night we did it so many times.
Yeah,
and then our sleeping situation was. Oh, we didn't talk about that.
No. Let's talk about the sleeping situation. So you come to this point that you're in precarious situation. You've got headlamps on. At some point, you're like.
It's 2 in the morning at this point.
Say it again. Sorry.
So I want to say it's 2 in the morning at this point.
Okay.
It's 3 hours until we have daylight.
Mm-hmm.
And it just seems to me like, if we can see, it's not going to be nearly as difficult as it is now.
Mm-hmm.
At 2 in the morning with the headlights, with limited visibility. And my legs were shaking. Like, I was so exhausted at this point. I couldn't even imagine. The only upside to continuing on is it would keep me warm.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it just seemed more and more dangerous the longer we kept trying to climb up and down that peak.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we weren't making progress.
Yeah.
Yeah, we weren't getting
anywhere. Kind of doing the same thing over and over again, and going around in circles. And
so explain to me.
There was no flat spot, though.
No
flat spot. I don't know what degree of angle we tried to sleep in air quotes but it was like there was these 2 trees and there was a dead tree like wedged that had wedged itself against those 2 trees. Mm-hmm. So I got like all the way to that so that at least that would hold me from going down the mountain. And then Mary was right next to me. So, but we had the bugs didn't start until really we got towards Copper Mountain, and I've never been in a situation with, it was like 80 to 100 mosquitoes just swarming you without stopping.
And that was still in the middle of the night?
Well, the middle of the night was okay. It was after the sun.
And they went away.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
For some reason, when we stopped and we got in our, we got our emergency blankets out, the bugs disappeared. So that was
small
really
emergencies.
nice.
I was so grateful for that.
Yeah.
That would have been horrible.
I'm glad that you had these safety precautions with you, that you had the emergency blankets with you. Because
it's a little bit scary. You've heard, there have been so many incidences lately where people stronger and more experienced, at least than myself, have actually died or fallen or,
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was one of the things I was thinking about is, this isn't a risk I'm willing to take. So yeah, and I think we always carry these emergency blankets, and I'm always worried it'll be just a really bad day if I have to pull them out, but it wasn't that bad. I was grateful I had it, and a couple of layers, and
good.
Yeah, it worked out.
Good.
And actually, another mercy is we had cell service on the top of the mountain. I was able to communicate, let my husband and Captain's boyfriend know, and
good.
That we were okay, and we were just gonna wait it out.
Yeah, it's one of the big advantages of that route, that it is reasonably accessible. It doesn't feel accessible when you're somewhere stuck between Rose and Copper. But you are not 30 miles, 40, 50 miles into the peninsula where you're in the middle of nowhere, right? You are only a couple of miles. But, a lot of people have gotten lost just a couple of miles off trail, right? So.
Well, and I think that was what was the most frustrating, is we were so close.
Mm-hmm.
We were just a few miles, and we were just in this little valley surrounded by cliffs, and we just couldn't figure out how in the heck to connect.
Yeah.
And when we did find it, I didn't feel too bad about it because it wasn't obvious. I was literally climbing through trees to reach the connector trail. And once I was up there, I could see if you had gone the regular route, the trail, but it wasn't clear from the backside.
Yeah. No, it is. There are definitely some sections. It's one of those weird things where I think the Olympics is weird, because once you get to the rock all the way to the top, the rock often is crap and you can hold onto anything and it's super sharp and everything breaks off. But you have this section between trees and that rock where there's often no trail, because no trail really is. There's not enough people up there to sort of create a trail. Lake of the Angels, above Lake of the Angels is a little bit similar, right? It becomes sort of a free for all where it's easy to navigate because you're above trees, but there is no clear direction of where you need to go. And I think Copper, the backside of Copper, until you sort of drop into all of that vegetation towards Wagon Wheel, it's a little bit similar.
Right. Well, and while I was up there, while I had internet service, trying to find on All Trails and the WTA site just a route, like any route, and I could find nothing. Just a little bit of information. I guess there's a common route up to the top of Copper Mountain, which I believe was our route down.
Yeah.
And once I got up there, you could kind of see where that went, but it just, in the dark, you couldn't see it at all.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and Copper then also has multiple summits, right? It is confusing. Right? You don't even know which peak you really are targeting, even in the daytime. I've done it now. I've been up there now twice, and it wasn't really clear which summit we actually need to target.
And I wonder if the first one we were climbing around on was the Fault Summit.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what that was, but it clearly wasn't where we needed to be.
Yeah.
But.
All right. So.
Yeah, the registry up there, I think the person before us, there had not been very many people that had put their names in the registry, so I don't think it is a really used, not too many people are up there a lot.
Well, how many people were actually on that register for the month of July?
I think just a couple.
Yeah,
I think there was just a couple for the entire month.
Yeah.
It is fascinating, and this is one of the reasons why I've sort of enjoyed creating this route. It's like Rose is so popular, Eleanor is overrun and so popular, and there are like several other mountains that realistically, of course, there's no trail and there's a different level of difficulty, but they're still similarly accessible, just from a mileage point of view. And it's sort of interesting that there aren't more established in the end, right? So
that's a beautiful mountain. I'm surprised. I mean, it's a beautiful mountain.
Yeah, I think the approach. I think the section right above Wagon Wheel turns a lot of people off because. Right.
I don't know, man. I don't know if you agree, but I don't. That may have been worse than actually being up on the mountain. That was crazy.
Yeah.
That's beyond
your request.
What I would call bushwhacking.
Yeah.
I'm looking at your line. I'm looking at the line on the phone, and we have like, 0.3 left to get to the lake. And I'm right on your track, and right in front of me it's extremely steep, full of marmot holes, and those prickly.
Yeah. Devil's Club.
Like 4 foot tall prickly things. And I'm like, this is the route?
Have medals.
What do we even hold on to?
Yeah.
Devil's Club. I think I did a backward somersault at that point down the mountain after I grabbed onto something that just crumbled.
Oh. And we were pretty done back then. We were pretty, but I never had anticipated to tag 2 peaks on copper, but because we went up one, and then Chris, my buddy who was with us, he does the peak bagger thing. So he pulls out his app so he gets points, and he's like, I have to go to this other summit so I can get my points. So that's when we added the 2 summits on copper. But then by the time we went down, at first, you cross a boulder field and a little bit of like high alpine grass and stuff, and you're like, oh, I can move here, this works. And then you drop towards Wagon Wheel, and that's when these marmot holes, as you're saying, and then this vegetation, it's just a really big turn off.
Well, and I think maybe if we had been able to do it in 16 hours, like you had done, that would have been one thing. But this was the next day, and I think that we were just a little bit over it at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I was very much over it by then too, for sure. But because I had done copper from the other side before, I knew that was what I was expecting. That I was, and so I was more ready for it.
Right. And I can see that as a huge benefit, because I think while we were up there, we were like, what the heck is this? We're never going to do this again, ever. But then, so now that we know the route.
Well, and you still have Cup Peak left, right?
Yeah, I know, but I think ropes would have helped in that section.
Well, and on Copper Mountain, I know where to go now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd be stuck up there for 12 hours trying to figure out where in the world I'm supposed to go. But
all right, and so the reason why you didn't do Cup Peak, even though it's the next day and you're over it, because by the time you had Wagon Wheel, Wagon Wheel is like one of the most sad and disappointing alpine lakes that there is. I don't know if there's. I have been up there a couple times.
It actually looks pretty good. It looks. I was telling Mary that too. I was saying, don't expect much. It's usually just kind of mucky, but it actually looked. It looked pretty this time.
I was so glad to see it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, by that time, you're
miles from home.
You're so relieved. You're like, oh my gosh, okay, this is good. Yeah, but we hit Wagon Wheel when it was slowly getting dark to the point that we were up on Cup Peak, still without headlamps, but it was getting cold, so we had to move fast. And I remember, I don't know if you've been up Cup Peak, but Cup Peak is a fairly steep boot path, first through sort of the underbrush and trees, and then you come up to this saddle that is like this wildflower meadow, which is absolutely beautiful. And from there you hit like this boulder, and then you have this little ridge line that you have to climb, which, you know, if you've done Washington, then and you feel fit and have yourself together, it's no problem again doing that ridge line. But if you're already shaking, you've done 5 more peaks. It was on the edge of what I was able to accomplish. There was a moment where I was like, I know I've said I need to do all these peaks, but I don't know if it's safe for me to climb all the way across. And I did it, and I'm obviously super glad that I did, because I made it to the real summit of Peak. But I was at my limit at that point.
Yeah. I just feel that there's so much energy. I mean, I think we probably put about double the amount of energy into this as we should have, because we did, like I said, because we did so many things repeatedly.
Mm-hmm.
So I was picking my son up at the airport the next morning, and so that was like one thing that was in the back of my head the whole time, And so whenever she got cell service, and then I could get that message out, that was a huge relief. And then the next morning, I found out he wasn't coming in till later.
Mm-hmm.
But I was still worried about getting there. I wanted to be on the airport on time. So that was a huge factor in the Cub Peak, but his flight ended up being 2 hours delayed. I told Mary later, maybe we could have done it, but
it was a little disappointing when you set up on a route and you have this plan in mind and then you skip stuff. It's always a little bit of a bummer, but it shouldn't have taken that long.
Mm-hmm.
We shouldn't have spent so much time on Copper Peak. And that just, if we were to do it again, like saying we're going to, but I think we'd do it much. We wouldn't spend the night up there for sure, because we know now where the route goes, and we'd absolutely hit that. And
start at 3 in the morning.
Well, I mean, this was our consideration. Yeah, this was our consideration, that we started super early, because and when we did it last September, the entire road along Lake Cushman was closed because of all this partying going on, so they just completely closed the road. So you couldn't drive into Staircase at all. So we knew we had the extra 7 miles of driving from Staircase back to Big Creek that we had to hike back, right? And so
there was definitely a feeling of, I'm really grateful we don't have to run 7 miles back to the car after we got to the camp. Because my there in Tabatha's was at the
good
trailhead for Washington, but
yeah, that's a smart way of doing it. I mean, we were even worried coming down Wagon Wheel. We were even worried because the road had been closed. Nobody was allowed in. That the campground might have even been, the water might have even been turned off, because we were really low on water. And in September there was no more snow really, and so it was really hard to find water, and so we were worried that was the possibility. And so,
well, I think that's one place that we kind of lucked out. We had enough running water and then enough snow fields that was we were just able to refill on the trail.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
But then a month or two later, that would all be gone.
Yeah, no, exactly. I saw the snow cave pictures at Washington. They look very cool. I've never seen that before. Yeah, I did.
Yeah, we got lucky too with fuel that we took enough fuel.
Good.
We didn't run out of calories, so I was pretty grateful for that.
Yeah, no,
that's an almond package, 260 more calories a day, because I couldn't find it until I cleaned out my pack.
There we go. That's good.
There. Yep.
Yeah, I took a trail nap on the way down Wagon Wheel. I slipped, and afterwards I sort of was rattled. I didn't get hurt, but I was sort of rattled. And then like a couple hundred feet later, I was like, I got to take a nap. I need to sit down and sort of let my body come down after the craziness of coming down the wagon wheel, then doing copper, and then trying to, at that point, full-on headlamp, sort of running down wagon wheel. And so I just sat down and I tried to eat something, drink something, and then I was like, I'm going to fall asleep. I was gone for like 10 minutes, which was the most glorious 10 minutes.
That wagon, that's a hard ending because it's so boring, and it's like the switchbacks. And I think Mary and I have been in that situation when we did the last year. We did the Hayden Hurricane FKT loop, and it was the same thing. We got to this switch. I was like, how many switchbacks? Like, we should have been counting. I swear there were 100 switchbacks on that one, and it's really hard when you're tired and you haven't really slept to do those switchbacks. It's kind of like driving down a windy road.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, there were those on that trail. Yeah, I really couldn't believe how long that took to get down that trail, wagon wheel. That was incredible.
It's funny, right? Because
I keep tired, and it seems like it's so runnable, but I'm exhausted.
Yeah. At that point, you just want to be done.
Yeah. My feet hurt.
We didn't want to fall anymore either.
No.
Yeah. Well, kudos to you for attempting it. This was a beast of a route, and even more so, kudos that you knew how to make the right decisions in the situations that you were in. You kept yourself safe. You pushed yourself. You tried something crazy and difficult, but you also knew when to make the right decisions. And I think that's that's the reason why you're still here, right? So that's that's important.
Well, if we do go back,
okay,
that's a big if, because I've already told my boyfriend that I will only do this if Mary agrees to go back. I don't really want to do it with anyone else. But, I thought about if we do it the other way. What are your thoughts on the other direction?
I had seen you mention it online, or you mentioned it to me. I don't know how I heard about it. Or I don't know if that's a good idea, because I think the traverse to Washington is just as difficult as the Copper area. And when you all the way to the end of your route have to navigate Washington downhill, it's also not that fun. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know if it's a good idea.
I kind of think that I would agree with you, actually. And mostly just because we've done it one way. Mm-hmm. Seems like to go back and do it the same way. But know what I know now would make it doable. Not necessarily easy, but at least that I don't feel like I would get stuck. I don't think I would climb that we shouldn't have. And I think that in the daylight, like especially between like Mount Washington and Eleanor, we would probably choose a different route, but where we could actually see.
Mm-hmm. I mean, if you would have just started earlier, right? Because you've got quite a few miles from Big Creek to the beginning of Washington, which you can easily do in the dark, and you can do
my notes, but I believe it took us a whole 7 hours just to get to the top of Washington. So that was
just to the top of Washington took you 7 hours.
Does that seem right to you, Tabatha?
No,
I think that's what I wrote down.
That's.
I don't know, because I think when we were at Rose, it was probably about 5 or 6 in the afternoon, and if we started at 6:30,
I'm a little sad I don't have this a bit.
Yeah,
but it took a while there. But regardless of the amount of time, it wasn't that difficult to follow that trail. Mm-hmm. So the trail up Mount Washington, I think you're right in saying that starting earlier is the smart way to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you think about it, at what time you hit Copper, if you would have just started instead of at 6:30 at 4:30, And
yeah,
right.
Or to would have made such a difference, because once you're up there and you can actually, so I was climbing through trees, which was not the right way, but from those trees, I could see where the trail goes. And if you were to the common route coming up, it seems like you would probably just climb up that same cliff, but off to the left. And in the light, you can see that, but in the dark, you just couldn't. And yeah, so we needed daylight at that point.
So
yeah, we needed to see beyond our headlights.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you could do Cup Peak in the dark, because you're just right on top of the ridge. If you would have headlamps, you could navigate that. But
well, and that's since we didn't do that part. That was something that we don't have experience with. But
yeah,
and we made it to the top of Copper Peak in the dark. We just couldn't find our way out of there. Yeah.
So where does this leave you? Sort of like the way you're thinking about it. Are there lots of, I mean, I'm not saying nightmares, but do you feel like you have put yourself in a position that was beyond your safety, your feeling of comfort, and you sort of glad that you're out alive, or do you feel like, no, we navigated this well, but we sort of made some tactical mistakes, and so therefore you should attempt it again? Do you feel like there is a little bit of I don't know, pride and ego there? You think, man, we really missed Cup Peak, we got to go back to that. Where are you with this now?
So I'm not competing with anybody,
yeah,
so there's not a lot of pride there. I feel like we stopped when it just seemed ridiculous to keep moving forward. We needed the light. So I think that we made a good decision there. Ideally, we would have found the trail out of there and just kept moving, but where we couldn't, it just made more sense to just stop, which was disappointing, because ideally we would have kept moving, and it delayed us for sure, but that's why we carry all this stuff, the hand warmers and the emergency blankets, just in case. And this was one of the just in case moments. But I think that I've mentioned it a couple times, if we were to do it again, we could do it. We could do it faster. We could get out of there in one shot, and we'd probably start earlier. And I don't think we'd get stuck on Copper, especially knowing now where we're going.
Yeah.
But I think I'm not willing to put myself. I would rather walk myself out on my own than have somebody come and rescue me.
Yeah. No, you definitely.
Even if. So.
Yeah, and I don't know what it is. It's the same thing with Mary. It's not like a pride or ego thing, but I just, like, ever since I left, I just want to go back. And I don't know if it's just because it's just such a unique route, and the mixture of, like, the actual climbing, because we're more trail runners, that I really enjoyed those parts of it. And then, you know, anytime you set out to do something and you don't complete it exactly the way you expected, you kind of have a bit of a desire to go back and kind of like unsettled business. So.
Cool. Well, if you do choose to go back and complete it, as a Christmas present last year for my two friends who did it with me, Scott and Chris, I made them a T-shirt which says Cushman Six Finisher. I haven't uploaded it on the website, but if you do it again, I'll definitely get you a T-shirt each for completing the route.
Well, then we have to go back.
You see?
You sure?
I know, right? I'll send you a picture.
Okay. Sounds like a good plan.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing your story. These stories are they're crazy and they're special, and they're what the podcast is all about. What this is not entirely what trail running is all about. This goes sort of beyond into a special niche of trail running. Sometimes people who run trails are just focusing on their pace or a specific race or something, but this definitely takes you beyond what the average person usually experiences. So again, I'm absolutely incredible that you set out to do this. I'm deeply impressed. Let's talk about a little bit what's next. Tabatha, you have mentioned that you on Facebook that you just started a new project, which I'm very intrigued about. And then Mary, you have Cascade Crest lining up. Did I hear this right?
Yes.
Is that your first 100-miler?
No, this will be number 4.
Oh, super, perfect.
Nothing happened last year, so it's been a while.
Yeah.
I'm going on vacation. I'm going to go to northern Utah. My husband has a family reunion, and I'll climb Mount Timpanogos, and I feel like I've gotten all of my long runs out of the way, and I can kind of just do what I want until Cascade Crest, and then
super.
How that'll go, but
that's great.
Yeah,
that's a very iconic race here in the Pacific Northwest. So that's awesome. Is there a lottery? How do you get into Cascade Crest right now?
Well, 2019 is when I signed up for this thing.
Okay.
So
yeah,
I believe it is a lottery, and I think I got pretty lucky getting in first try. I wasn't really expecting that. That's why I did Needles. It does part of that course, so it gives me a little experience. I met the guy who I wish I could remember his full name. I'm so bad with names, but he does the volunteer side of things on the Cascade team, and he was a lot of fun to chat with on the way down from Needles. Super.
So you feel ready for that one?
I'm running pretty consistently, and I think all of this elevation. I did backcountry rise, the Needles, and Cushman 6 Peaks route, and then I went and I just did that sweep of the White River 50-mile course Friday and Saturday. So I feel like from here, if I'm not ready, then I'm just in a lot of trouble.
Super.
I'm not more ready than I am now. So.
Super. That's awesome. Tabatha, you just started a really cool project. Tell me a little bit about that one.
Oh, I just turned 49, so I just thought from the age of 49 to 50, I would try to at least do 50 mountain summits for the year. So we actually went back to Mount Washington because my boyfriend had never been there, and I just thought it was a cool mountain. And so we went there on my birthday and got number 1 knocked out. So
well, belated happy birthday.
Kind of fun.
Yeah, no, it's a fun project. I mean, I think those unique projects are. I feel like those are the best part of our sport, right? I mean, and they sort of compete. I got pulled in. I mean, last year, there's no races. I had time to think about all kinds of fun runs, and that's when this Cushman 6 actually happened. This year, I have no big adventures really planned because I'm knee deep in preparation for races, right? And so they compete a little bit. And so when you have and you can come up with your own little projects and then you're ego free, right? You're not competing with anyone. You're just setting it out, and and then 50 peaks in a year. It's a lot of peaks. You definitely have to hit Cushman 6 in order to get quite a few peaks in one go, right? Because otherwise you're stuck with doing every single peak. That's a lot of time.
Yeah, I kind of like the break from races personally, and I kind of like doing more of the adventures and things like that. But I am a little curious if you know of any races. Now, when I do look at a race, I have to ask, okay, how many peaks or how many summits are we going to run during the race? So I'm looking for races that have, actual mountain climbs to the top of a mountain in them. If you know any.
I mean, really, the only one I know is Beast of Big Creek, right? Do you?
Yeah.
You know of that one, right?
Yeah.
I think that one's coming up this weekend or something like that, right? I mean, that would get you Eleanor, but it's. I think well, I mean, you it's a little bit difficult to define what a summit is a summit, right? Because they are definitely sort of like high points. I mean, you could come down here in the Capitol Forest and you can go to Rock Candy Mountain and Large Mountain and Capitol Peak, and you would get not on a race, but you would get some peaks fairly easy. But those are not really like mountain summits. They are more like high points that are considered summits. You know what I mean? So I don't know if they would fit your definition of what you're looking for.
Yeah, and I'm not that picky about it, really. It's, like I said, just kind of for fun. So if something has the title Peak after its name, I'll count it.
Okay. No, it's good because, you know, I've got this buddy who is this peak bagger. He has this app, right? And so he goes around and he goes like to all these like random high points. He tries to be on every highest point of each county in Washington State, right? And so he finds himself like bushwhacking through the most random hill on some private forest land, you know, and then he's like, "Ooh, I'm at 1,800 feet. This is the high point." And I'm like, I don't know if that was worth it.
1,800 feet. Oh, jeez. Well, and that just means you have to come out to my
Yeah, exactly.
And some of the peaks over like Snoqualmie Pass and.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Well, we just need to create routes with lots of peaks. If I can't find races, we'll just on this new route. There's 10 peaks in it.
Yeah,
so it'll make it kind of a fun year.
To knock them all out.
I want to say they're the Snoqualmie 7, but 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Mm-hmm. And I think you can climb multiple peaks in the enchantments too, but that's mountaineering, right? I mean, then you need real gear.
Yeah, and I think our plan is to go to Colorado too next year, work on some of the 14ers.
Oh yeah.
In the summer. Yeah.
Well, super. I don't want to keep you any longer here. You have been absolute incredible guests. Thank you for sharing your story. It's incredible. I hope my listeners will love the story just as much as I did. Obviously, I felt every bit of the trail since I had just done it myself and came up with this crazy route. So thank you so much for trying to follow my footsteps. I promise to work on a better GPX file next time or something. That's
out of your control.
we do need to figure out how to clean that piece up so people can easier follow it. So yes, Tabatha Collins, Mary Flinders. Thank you so much for being on the show, and to all our listeners, we hear each other next week.